Chris Jones, welcome to Acquiring Minds.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I'm really happy to be here. I listen to you pretty frequently these days, going to and from work. And so, it's an honor to be here.
Awesome. Well, I love to get listeners into the seat, Chris. So it's great to have you here. You bought a foundation repair business in North Carolina. It was a tumultuous, difficult transition, but you are feeling like maybe the worst is behind you, as I gathered from our pre-call. And in fact, you're even flirting with the idea of another acquisition. So we are going to hear all of that and learn something about the foundation repair business, which is one that I bet many listeners have wondered about. Let's start with some background on you, please, Chris.
Sure. Yeah. So I did acquire this business just over a year ago now. Prior to purchasing the company, most of my career was spent in mortgage credit finance. So I started out after getting my master's in finance. I was working at a private bank in Miami. And then, I really just started to feel more and more that entrepreneurial desire that had been in the back of my head for a while. I'd read, Startup Owner's Manual, and I'd read, of course, all of the ETA books, Harvard Business Review, and Buy Then Build, and all of that. And I eventually realized, like a lot of listeners on your show that, or guests on your show, that I didn't need to necessarily have a great idea or have a startup, because I didn't have any great ideas, but I knew that I wanted to have a business of my own someday. And so it dawned on me that I could buy a business. And I'd been saving money all along, and I guess I also just had some lucky timing too. In my life, when I bought my first house, it was 2011, and then I bought my second. Sold that and needed a bigger house because my wife got pregnant, and so I bought that house in late 2012, and so the real estate market at the time was very, very depressed, and so that actually ended up helping me out quite a bit to equity gains, or a large way that I was able to eventually fund my business purchase when I moved from Miami to Charlotte. But I started to just digest everything I could about ETA and small business acquisition, and I'd also kind of come to the realization at that time that I really would prefer not to live in Miami. Miami's a very vibrant and fun place, and there's a lot going on, but I have a young family, and I just felt like I had been to Charlotte for work a number of times with my old employer, and it just seemed like a great place to be. And I kind of just decided that this seems like something that I'd like to try out. So when COVID hit in 2020, I was working from home. My wife was a teacher at the time, and she was working from home. And we were basically just my kids were at home, and we're like, well, we could do what we're doing right now from really anywhere. We don't have to be where we are. And we had talked about trying to live somewhere else for a little while, and so we just decided to give it a try. So we rented a house in Charlotte, sight unseen. We had a mutual, a friend of our neighbors who went over and checked it out for us, and showed us basically on FaceTime what everything looked like. And we were like, okay, well, that seems like a nice spot. We could probably give that a try for a year. So we rented this house and got a moving truck and packed up our stuff and moved to Charlotte. And
Did you sell the house in Miami?
We did not. We actually kept the house in Miami for another year, because that was kind of our fallback plan, was if we didn't like it and if it didn't work out and it wasn't a better life for us, we would just call the moving truck back and load it back up and go back home.
So do you get serious about your search when you get to Charlotte? Was the idea that you would kind of start this new life, including a professional life, in the form of buying a business upon arrival in Charlotte?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly right. The idea was kind of get to where we want to be geographically, and then after that point, I was planning to really put 100% of my efforts into finding a business. And it was going to be, very geographically focused in the greater Charlotte area. So, that's exactly what we did. I had started out looking for businesses in Charlotte while I was still in Florida a little bit. So I actually got introduced to a number of brokers in the Charlotte community. And funny enough, I think it was the first or second phone call I ever had with a seller was actually the sellers of the company that I ultimately ended up purchasing back in the end of 2019. So they had put the business on the market at the end of 2019, and I really wasn't prepared to even send an LOI or do anything at that point, but I was just trying to kind of get some reps in terms of meeting with sellers and looking at deals. So I was talking to brokers in the Charlotte area, and they introduced me to this business, and I had a call with the sellers, and I didn't put in an offer or anything, but they ended up pulling the business off. They had an offer that was, I guess, moving forward, and then they ended up pulling everything off the market because COVID hit. This was probably December of 2019 when I had the phone call with them initially. So before the closing would have taken place, they took the business off the market and just decided to run it for a little bit longer until things normalized a bit.
Well, give us a quick picture of what your search looked like once you started it in earnest from Charlotte.
So, the way that I describe it to people is I was not really, doing a search fund. I was not doing anything like that. I was just kind of a guy looking to buy a business. So I was working from home. And my wife would go to work, my kids would go to school, and it was very quiet in there. And, I was used to working a fair amount of hours with my former employer. So, I just basically squeezed it in whenever I could. I would work during the day. I would be, whenever I had some time, I would talk to brokers. I would, review CIMs. I would work late at night to, review the CIMs when they came back in, so that I wasn't losing too much productivity at work. But, I think you've had other guests that have made similar comments. Like I probably wasn't as good of an employee at that point as I could have been, because I was definitely trying to do something else. I knew that, I was like, well, here we are, I'm here now, time to dedicate as much as I can. But at the same time, I wasn't going to quit my job and try and raise a search fund and all of that, because I had to, I had my family obligations that I needed to tend to. So I was just trying to do broker outreach and trying to review as many deals as I could. And I was really just focusing on the Charlotte area. And so every broker I talked to, I said, everything in my price range that's in this geography, I want to look at. I was very industry agnostic. And, saw a lot of...
And what was your price range?
I was looking for anything in kind of the $2 to $4 million range.
And you connect with the local brokers, and I assume you're also looking at biz buy sell.
Right.
How do you happen across or I guess I should say, how does the business that you'd already made contact with back in 2019 circle back around to land on your desk?
So the brokers that had brought it forth originally, the sellers came back to them when they were ready to relist it. And I was working pretty closely with that particular brokerage because they see a lot of, they were one of the bigger brokerages in this area, and they specialize in kind of North and South Carolina. And so I had basically a buyer's representative over there at that brokerage that was, I was, I guess, on their short list at that point, where anything that came up, they would call me right away and present it to me. And that came after just showing them that I was serious for a significant amount of time, going to lunches with them and just demonstrating that, this is 100% what I expect to do ultimately. So it took a little while to get to that point, but eventually got on their short list.
That's great to hear, because, of course, getting brokers to take you seriously is kind of one of the first hurdles that a searcher has to get across. Getting to the point where you're actually on their short list is maybe even more progress than your average searcher hopes to make. So it's great that you were able to do that. So how often were they calling you with a new deal, and how often were those deals like something that you wanted to look at once you were on the short list?
I was probably, in total, from all the different brokers I was talking to, I was probably looking at 1 or 2 deals a week. And, some of them were immediate no's. And so I didn't really look at anything much that given week. But then, other ones would come along and they would seem like they would fit some of the boxes, but not all of the boxes. And so I'd spend some time with it, but then, politely decline. They were, whenever they had something that fit, they were really good about it. So I have, I have good things to say about the broker that I worked with.
Well, if you were industry agnostic and you said your price range was 2 to 4 million, did you say?
Yes. Yeah, that's right.
That's a lot of businesses. That's a lot of businesses are going to fall in that price range. Above 4 million, you start to get into pretty sizable business that might attract the attention of PE, and below that size, it's going to be there's going to be a lot of businesses that sell for less than 2 million, to be sure. But still, you cast a pretty wide net, which of course, if it's a geographically constrained search, you're going to need to do anyway.
Right. Yeah. We had just packed up and moved here. So my wife especially, and, me, and nobody was interested at that point in turning around and relocating again anytime soon. So, moving sucks. So, didn't want to do that again if we didn't have to. And so I was pretty firm on that requirement. But yeah, I looked at everything from, trucking companies to, fast food restaurants to the companies that produce plastic to put over crops and on the top of dumpster trucks, just all sorts of crazy stuff. So, but a lot of home services.
Okay. And so, yeah, well, that's a common one. So the business that you did buy is brought back on the market to these brokers that have a relationship with. They call you, they tell you about it. You recall it from back in 2019. Tell us how all of that unfolds.
So yes, they reached out to me and they said, "Oh, I know that you did talk to these people, a couple years ago. Wanted to let you know that it is back on the market, and the people that had originally made an offer are not going to be making an offer this time." That was around January of 2022. So I said, "Yeah, I'm interested. Definitely. Let's see." So I started down the path with them and did due diligence. At that point, I had a couple SBA lenders that I was pretty familiar with, and I had an attorney and I had a CPA lined up because I was trying to do my part to be ready when the right business came along. And so I went and I did. Got further into due diligence with them than most of the other companies. I did issue an LOI. My understanding is that there was 2 or 3 other potential buyers at the time. And I was informed eventually that, my offer was not accepted, that basically I had lost out to another buyer. So, I was disappointed about that. And I went and I talked to my wife. I was like, "Oh, I thought that this really might have worked out. I was pretty excited about this one." And, she's like, "Well, whatever happens. That's the way these things go. There'll be something else." And so I just kept looking at other businesses. I met with a couple of other sellers in the next 3 months or so. And then I got a call back from the broker and they were telling me that they didn't think that the deal was going to go through, but they weren't sure yet. They wanted to give me a heads up and see if I was still interested just in case it didn't go through. So I guess they were just trying to keep me warm. And yeah, about 2-3 weeks after that, got a call from them and said that the deal did not go through with the original buyer. So, I didn't get a ton of color around what happened. My understanding is that he had kind of wanted to make it more of a hands-off, passive type of investment. From what I know, he was a Harvard grad and a fighter pilot and had a consulting business and had all these other things. I was like, yeah, I probably would have taken his offer too, no problem. But yeah, it fell through. I guess he realized that there was going to be more to it than more active management than he thought. And I didn't shy away from that because I expected to quit my job and do this all day, every day as my new career. So I said, fine, I'm still interested. So
speaking of active management,
yeah,
we're about to hear just how active this management was and is. Is there anything that you want to say? Because I want to spend some time once you're actually in the seat, Chris. Is there anything that you want to call our attention to about the transaction itself and the negotiation?
The transaction was okay. There was a couple things that came up along the way where I had been basically working off of QuickBooks numbers the entire time, and doing all of my due diligence and modeling cash flow off of the QuickBooks numbers. And then pretty late in the process, I got a link to some other file that got put in the data room, and it had this whole suite of management reporting. And the management reporting was, had different numbers for sales and production and all of that than what was in QuickBooks. And so I was like, well, what's all this? How do I make sense of this? So we spent a fair amount of time and we went through that, and eventually I was able to get comfortable with the differences between how they internally reported numbers versus how they were doing it for accounting purposes. But that was just kind of, it wasn't really presented to me from the beginning. It was kind of just something that was, eventually made its way to the data room, and I had to ask about it, and then we dug into it a bit.
And was that a harbinger of things to come? Was that kind of emblematic of how the business was run, that things were not always what they seemed, or was that an innocent oversight?
I mean, I'll say it was just something that was probably an innocent oversight. I mean, it was probably a little bit of an element of, if just wait for him to ask, and then, then we'll give him information once he asks about it. But it wasn't, nothing terrible came out of that. So I was able to kind of get around that. One of the other things that kept popping up is when we'd be reviewing the QuickBooks P&L numbers, their numbers would kind of change from one time I looked at it to the next. Like, February's P&L number would be this week, and then slightly different next week. And I was like, well, I thought the books were closed, and there was always, well, this invoice came in, or that invoice came in, or we ended up finishing this job that wasn't accounted for. So little things like that. I mean, it was just kind of at the time I was like, well, I think I can get over this. It's a small business. I understand that they don't have the most sophisticated accounting practices. So, but little things like that, where having invoices being processed way after the fact was, a little bit of a red flag at the time.
Okay, Chris. So as you're going through the transaction, there are what we might call yellow flags or small red flags that are appearing. But it's easy to kind of explain that away to oneself by saying, well, this is the nature of small business. Let's fast forward now to you actually getting into the business. Tell us about the first month. So the first,
even the first day, I assume that's chaotic for everybody. But, even just leading up to that first day, like the week before was very chaotic before closing. I was moving houses. My son had to have an emergency surgery. I was trying to close on a HELOC on my house, and it finally closed in time because I was trying to avoid having to have any equity available, so that for the SBA loan. So that was a little insight that had been passed along to me by my lender, that you'll still have to have a personal guarantee, but if you take up any excess equity with this HELOC, you will then not have to have a lien on your house. I was like, oh, that sounds really nice. Let me do that.
I had not heard that.
Yeah. So that was great. But I was trying to get all of those things taken care of. And then the day of the sale, I basically came towards the office, and the sellers were saying, "Oh, well, we're going to make the announcement at the end of the day, and right after we make the announcement, you can come over." So I got towards the office a little bit early. There's a fast food restaurant right across the street from our office, and so I figured, oh, I'll just sit here and wait for the word. And I felt like I was sitting there forever. It went way past the time when I was expected to be told to come over and introduce myself. And so eventually I got the call to come over and introduce myself, and it was just it was a lot of kind of blank stares from people. It was a lot of people that had a hard time with it and were just confused. And my understanding, I found out later, is that they had pretty recently made an announcement to people that we're not selling this company, because they had basically started a new chapter in their life and had moved from being close to the office to being about an hour, a little over an hour away from the office. So they weren't really in the office very often. So I guess there was some speculation that they might be selling the company, and then they told everybody, no, we're not selling the company, and then turn around a month or so later and yeah, we are selling the company, and here's the guy, he's right here, he's sitting at Bojangles across the street. So
oh man.
Yeah.
So you could feel the tension in the room, and the confusion, and the kind of lack of receptivity to you and your message.
Yeah, I think that they were just confused with everything in general. I tried to kind of keep my speech short and touch on the typical things you'd want to touch on of, I'm not planning to change anything. I just want to build on all the great things that this company is all about and help grow. And I'm going to be here all day, every day. And all of those things that I had hoped would kind of put people at ease. And, I think maybe it did to some extent, but I think they were just taken aback because nobody kind of saw it coming.
Mm-hmm.
So, that was the first day. The next couple weeks we had kind of rushed the closing because there was supposed to be a management retreat that I was going to go on to Charleston or somewhere. And so we had trying to rush the closing and just get it done because we wanted to go on this retreat, and I was going to go strategize with the leaders of the company and the sellers and all of that. And then, as soon as we closed, I realized like this just isn't possible. Like I can't go out of town for several days now. I felt like the first probably 2 weeks post closing, I was just basically sitting in my office here, switching accounts for the most part. I mean, mm-hmm. There was a lot of legwork to be done with everything from, fleet fuel cards to 3 or 4 different phone, internet, and service providers for alarm systems, for everything. Like everything just took a really long time to switch these accounts over. So I felt like I was at it for literally about 2 weeks, just sitting mm-hmm. in the office. And this is time that I wasn't spending with the guys, that do the production or going out in the field or just even forming relationships. I was basically just holed up in my office on the phone for 2 weeks. So, that was kind of a lesson learned in the future. If I was to do it again, I would probably want to actually consummate the closing and get all of that stuff ironed out before making the announcement, so that it wasn't just kind of, hey, I'm here and I'll be in the office on the phone if you need me. Mm-hmm. So yeah. It would have been really nice to have that pressure off. So. But,
yeah, that's a great tip, because this transitioning of accounts is something that comes up a lot. But as you paint a picture of it, that, you had this rocky first day speech, and then rather than kind of trying to claw your way back out of that with rapport building and glad handing and going around and kind of getting to know people, you're just some new guy holed up in the office.
Right. Well, their company had been around since Yeah, their company had been around since 2006 also, so they had all these long established accounts. And, I had just set up a new LLC a month before with that had no credit history, brand new EIN, all of that. So some of these cases where, you're trying to get a pretty significant line of credit with the fuel company or with the material suppliers and all those things, like to be a new business with no credit and be a new owner, that was tougher than I thought it would be, for sure.
Okay. Carry on. So you push your way through these 2 weeks, but are not really getting to know the team and decide you can't go to this retreat. By the way, before you answer that, Chris, I didn't ask you for a kind of size of business. How big is it in dollar numbers and people numbers, and anything you can share?
So we've got about 35 employees, and revenue-wise, we're probably on track to be about $6 million company this year for revenue.
Thank you for that. So, what happens after these first rocky 2 weeks?
Well, I mean, we had made plans to get together and have the seller come in and spend time here in the office and cross-train me. And I think there were a couple times that the seller came in, but it really kind of more turned into them going around and talking to the guys and doing more social things rather than sitting down and training me on anything in particular. And so it kind of, after a couple of those sessions, it became clear to me that really I wasn't getting a whole lot out of that. So I just figured, there's no real reason to keep doing this. It's clear that the seller wanted to kind of get on with their new endeavors, and I would just probably be better off just figuring it out on my own. So there really wasn't much of a transition period, so to speak.
And Chris, talk a little bit about the fact that you were, there was going to be a learning curve here. You're buying a foundation repair business, which is kind of like broadly in the construction and trades industry. And you, as you described at the outset, you coming from a very white collar environment, behind a computer screen to a very different environment. And we're going to have to learn at least something about the business of foundation repair. So you were anticipating a learning curve. Talk us through how you were thinking about that, and then what it was actually like once you got in the seat.
Yeah, so I definitely was anticipating a learning curve. Coming from the background that I had, working in finance and spreadsheets most of the day, I knew that I was not going to get a company that was exactly like what I had been doing in the past. So I was well aware there was going to be a learning curve no matter what. I knew coming into this one that there was going to be a little bit more of a learning curve, just because the fact that it is construction. I don't have a background in construction. One of the stipulations with the deal was that I had to get my general contractor's license. So that was, I did some research into it, and it didn't seem like anything that was too crazy. It just seemed like a lot of reading of books and studying, and then taking a couple tests. And so I figured, I'm decent at taking tests, so I'll probably be okay. But I didn't have time for the first couple months to really even get into studying and doing all that, just because I was at the business all the time, and there was just, even on the weekends, I was doing work, and I didn't have a lot of opportunity to study. But the learning curve and the having the background that wasn't in construction was probably my biggest concern going into it. And I was really concerned about how I was going to be received by the people in the company coming in without that background. The prior owner, owners, it was a husband and wife team, and the husband had started the company from the ground up, and he was really kind of revered by the guys around here. Like they still tell stories about him and the time he did this crazy thing, or did this at a house and fixed some problem by hitting it with a hammer really hard, or stuff like that. Like he's kind of like he was really looked up to by the guys around here, and I knew that was very different from than my background, and I'm just kind of also naturally a semi-introverted person. I'm not. I have always felt more comfortable kind of doing the analytical work than out there on a construction site and screwing around with the guys and cracking jokes and all of that. So I knew that it was going to be a transition, but I felt like this is a challenge. I can do this. I felt pretty confident, and I felt like as long as I come in and I treat people fairly and with respect, eventually that they'll hopefully recognize that. And if they don't, then that's unfortunate. But that really is the way that it worked out. The funny thing is that the guys that are actually doing the construction work have been very, very welcoming and accepting of me, and teach me things all the time. I go out and I'll go to jobs with them, and they know that I don't necessarily have a lot of the knowledge that they do, and so they'll show me things and explain themselves and why they're doing the things that they're doing. So I really do appreciate that. They've actually been really great. The problems that I had with employees was much more so on the office and the management side, which is the total opposite of what I had expected. Yeah, I thought it would be the construction guys that would not accept me. So
yeah. Well, pick your poison. But no, that's great. I'm glad to hear. I'm really glad to hear that. That I love hearing that about crews, tradespeople being welcoming and being receptive to an eager new buyer learning. Because I just feel like it's, you're putting yourself in a vulnerable position going out there. You're the boss. You're this finance guy who came in and bought the business, but you're willing to kind of be like, hey, you guys are the experts and I'm here to learn, teach me. I think it's a really good and healthy dynamic. But good segue there, Chris. So tell us what problems you had with the people who are at home base, the people in the office.
So, yeah, I mean, those started pretty soon thereafter. I mean, there was a lot of, since the sellers hadn't been on site a lot, there was kind of almost like no adult supervision, really. So there was a lot of people kind of going out to long 2-hour lunches and having a bunch of beers at lunch and coming back, and then, coming back from that lunch and then just kind of screwing around the shop and doing whatever they could to pass the time until it was time to go home, and not actually really contributing a lot. There was that. And then there was also, the person who was the general manager when I came in. I had been assured that he was rock solid, and this guy's been with the company for a long time, and he can do everything. You don't even really need to go into the office. And I was kind of initially hoping that he was going to be the qualifier for the business, just because he had his whole career had been spent in construction, and so I was kind of banking on him getting his general contractor's license and being the qualifier. So I started to get him to enroll in the classes, and I paid for all the books and the classes, and encouraged him to go out and get that license for us, which we needed. And he went out and he did it, and basically as soon as he passed the state test, which isn't even all of the tests you have to take, he passed the one test. He came into me the next day, and he gave me an envelope with a couple $100 in it. That was the cost of all the classes, and a resignation letter saying that he was quitting. So wow. I thought, oh, okay, well, there goes that. And then also, I don't have a general manager right now. So I came to find out later that I think it was 8 days after I purchased the business, he had set up his own LLC and was basically planning from the very, very beginning to go out on his own. And I found out from just talking to people around that I guess there had been some conversation with the sellers and with him a few years back, which was kind of an informal conversation over dinner or something along those lines, where they had kind of informally suggested to him that if they were to ever sell the business, that they would sell it to him. So I think
He
that
felt he was totally blindsided and felt betrayed even.
I think he was blindsided and felt betrayed. Exactly right. And, he told me when he was giving his resignation, he's like, I have nothing against you. You're just a guy that bought a business, but this is different than what I signed up for. So,
yeah.
And I said,
man, that's tough.
I was like, all right. I was like, well, it's a free country. Obviously I wish you luck and go out and, do what you want to do. Like I don't try and hire the people away from here, but if you want to go out and start your own company, that's fine with me. And so, now he has a competing company in the area.
Wow. And just going back a little bit to his role within the business as GM, your general manager, your sellers have told you that he's rock solid and a rock star. And you, who doesn't know the business of foundation repair, you're perfectly willing to be in the business all day, every day to learn it. But were you envisioning really leaning on this person to keep the trains running on time as you moved up that learning curve? I mean, to what extent were you panicked when he gave notice? I guess is a more concise way of asking. Or were you fine with it? Were you fine? Like, was it sucked, but you figured you could manage?
Yeah, I was definitely during due diligence. I was definitely counting on him a lot. I was planning to lean on him a lot as one of the people that had the most, product and technical knowledge, and also somebody that kept the trains running on time and had a good rapport with all the guys, and just oversaw. I mean, he wasn't really involved with P&L or sales, but he was very heavy on kind of the operations and the management and the production side of the house, managing the guys going out in the field. So yeah, I was during due diligence. I was definitely thinking, oh well, this is one of the things that gives me comfort, is that there's this person in place. He's a young guy. He's been there for a couple of years, but not too long and not too short. Hopefully I can get in there and we can form a good relationship. And I told him, I was like, I plan to grow this company, and I would definitely like to see you make a lot more money than you're making now. Which he wasn't making bad money at the time. I mean, and he had a free King Ranch F-250 truck with a gas card and a paid cell phone and all of these things, and good salary, got a percentage of production. But it just we just never really clicked. And I mean, I just don't think there was nothing that could have been different that could have made it work. I think he was just he had a very good relationship with the sellers, and I think he was blindsided and hurt and didn't want to be associated with the business anymore. So, that led to him, he was acting out like he was one of the ones that was going out and, having a bunch of beers at lunch and coming back at 2:00. And it was like, well, where have you been? Like, where have you been for the last couple hours? And then, any excuse there was to go visit a job to get out of the office and not be here in the office, he'd be like, oh, I'll go out there. He would volunteer for every possible opportunity to not be here. So, I mean, I was sitting there and I was like, well, geez, like this is not working very well at all. Like this guy's not actually helping me at all. So by the time that he came around to, tendering his resignation, it was half concern and half relief, I'd say, because I knew that was not a sustainable way to do things. So
yeah, he was either going to quit or you were going to have an uncomfortable conversation with him.
Well, yeah, I did have uncomfortable conversations with him, but the thing was, like, coming in here as somebody without industry experience and new and all of that, like, I was really concerned about, well, what's going to happen to everybody here and their morale if I fire this guy that's been their leader for the last couple of years because he, is not doing his job. Like he did have a great rapport with all the guys. I mean, that was most of what he did, was sitting around and BSing with the guys at the end of the day and hanging out. So I was thinking, if I fire this guy, like, who knows what everyone's reaction is going to be.
Totally. So unpredictable and daunting. On the other hand, maybe they saw that he was taking long lunches and not working very hard and coming back with beer on his breath. And there was resentment on their part, even though they were joshing around with him at the end of the day. So
yeah, but they'd been joshing around with him after they'd been working for 10, 12 hours doing serious, hard, dirty work.
Yeah.
So I do think that definitely was picked up on by some of the guys, and some of the guys did make comments to me about that. But I still just had this feeling that he was very important, and that there might be some sort of mutiny if he wasn't here. But it turns out that wasn't the case. Like that, it was okay.
Well, that's great, Chris. I mean, that's great that there wasn't a mutiny. I'm reminded of one of my recent interviews, the one that was anonymous with the person who's really in it right now, and I mean, really, it's not clear if she's going to make it through. But one of the many disastrous things that happens is, some of the leadership leaves, and what does that do to morale? Because everybody,
right.
if somebody is a leader in the business and then leaves, and other people admire that person, do they follow that person? I mean, especially if the person is going off to start a competing entity. Do they? Right. Why not just go with him? I like that guy, so I'll thank you very much. Goodbye, new owner. I'm going to just go work for this guy who I already know and respect. So you just worry about this terrible domino effect taking hold. Well, Chris, you lose your GM. That even though, as we now hear, like maybe that was for the best, and it maybe even gave you some relief even in the moment, but still, on paper, not a good thing. Your sellers are not helpful at all in the transition. So all these kind of pillars you thought you were going to have to lean on and help you get your arms around this business have crashed down, disappeared, gone away. How you feeling? Have you had a fetal position moment at this point yet?
Yeah, I was not feeling great for the first couple months. I would say the first 4 to 6 months. I didn't have the fetal position on the bathroom floor. I think I had a position where I was sitting at the picnic table outside, and I was like, I just had this wave of nausea coming over me. And I'm like, oh my God, what have I done? Like, did I make a terrible mistake? Is everything that I've been working towards just amounted to this, and this was the wrong thing to do? But, so I definitely felt like that for a while. I mean, I was pretty highly stressed for a couple months. I mean, I was at the point where, I wasn't very much fun to be around at home, and I wasn't really enjoying, even on the weekends when I was trying to hang out with my family and do things to distract me. I couldn't get these things off of my mind. So, that was a little bit tough. And obviously that stressed my wife out pretty considerably too, because just her seeing me like this, and she was saying, oh, what can I do to help? I was like, well, I appreciate it, but there's nothing you can do to help. I just have to figure it out. So, but that was tough.
What about the family piece, and just the fact that you guys have made this other parallel big decision to move up to North Carolina? So you've made a number of kind of big decisions in tandem. Does it feel like the whole thing is in jeopardy now? I mean, not only maybe do you have moments where you're like, man, I wish I hadn't bought this business. Man, I wish we were back in Florida in that house we owned.
Yeah.
5 states away.
I've definitely had that thought a couple times, not recently, but at the, a year ago, I definitely had that thought a couple times, like, well, geez, I had a nice position at a great company. I was, basically the number 2 person in our group. I had a ton of leeway and a ton of freedom that everybody trusted me. I got a nice bonus at the end of the year every year. I had we'd lived in a great neighborhood, and my kid's school was 2 minutes away, and it was a nice existence. Like, there was nothing at all wrong with it. I definitely had that thought, like maybe that would have been better to just keep doing that. But that was just temporary. I'm not having those thoughts any longer, and I haven't had those thoughts for a while now. I realize that we're on the right track. So, but yeah, at the time it was nerve-wracking.
I want to get to how you got things onto the right track, but indulge me, and can we just dwell in this ugly part for a minute? Like the moment, but really just for the benefit of people who might be experiencing this or have to experience this at some point. you're, the picnic table moment, the nausea moment. What do you do? Is it like, how did you manage that? Is it the Churchill quote, like when you're going through hell, keep going sort of thing? Or was there anything you'd advise somebody in that position?
Yeah, I think it was just keep going at that point. I mean, there really wasn't any alternative. I mean, as you know, when you buy a business, it's not liquid. You sign a personal guarantee. You're doing all of these things. You've quit your job. There really is no alternative. Like you've sailed to the shore and burned the ships, and you got to figure out how to make it work. So
burn the ships. That's right.
That's where I was, and there was no other option. I just had to kind of keep going and trust that if I kept doing what I was doing day in and day out and tried to, be smart about what people brought on to the company, like what new people were brought on and how to shuffle around existing people, that we could make it work. And that was really it. I mean, it was just kind of blind faith at that point, and just having faith in myself, and that, there was no other alternative. I couldn't do anything else. So.
Yeah, exactly. It kind of makes things simple when there's no options.
Right. Yeah.
Not easier, but maybe simple.
Right.
Okay, Chris, well, tell us more about the sellers. Are you having interactions with them as this transition? For example, the thing about it had apparently been implied to the GM that maybe he'd have a shot at buying the business. Did you circle back with the sellers and ask them about this? Are you having interactions with the sellers, or have they just disappeared?
I mean, I was coming to them for things that I had to go to them for, not really for advice, but really more on accounts that I had questions on, or how does this or that work around the office, but not really. I really wasn't going to them for too much advice at that point. One of the other things that came up is that we had the way that the broker that I worked with is that they had a kind of a impartial attorney draft all of the closing documents. So the seller paid half of the attorney's fees, and I paid half of the attorney's fees. And then I had a separate attorney on my side reviewing everything. But the APA and everything had they had a WIP schedule, and the WIP schedule had language, but it didn't have dollars tied to the language. So there was all these jobs that were in process when I bought the business. And I think that the seller had their interpretation in their mind, and they thought it was clear, and I had my interpretation in my mind, and I thought it was clear. And then we close, and it turns out that we're on very different sides of the aisle in terms of what we thought was owed to whom for WIP. So
and Chris, define WIP for people.
Yeah, so the work in progress, and in this particular case, I'm talking about the jobs that we have going on. So we have, our average job is $10,000 to $15,000, and we have, a dozen or so jobs going on at any given point in various stages of completion. And the way that we track it is that you assign the crew that's working on the job just puts in an estimate of how much they think it is completed on a percentage basis. So this job's 20% done, or that job's 80% done. And so there was a sheet that had all these jobs that were in process with different percentages. And, I thought that it was clear in the documentation, and I guess the seller thought it was clear in the documentation, but we had different interpretations. And so post-closing, I was like, okay, well, so what about this, this post-closing true-up? And the seller was like, yeah, well, what about the post-closing true-up? You owe us money. And I was like, well, no, you owe me money. So there was some back and forth on that for a while, and we had to get the attorneys re-involved and things like that. But at the time, like there was some talk between the seller and the prior general manager of like, well, he owes us money and he's not even paying it, type of thing. And I was like, no, that's not correct. That's not what's going on here at all.
Two questions, Chris. Do you think it was an honest disagreement between you and them, or less than honest? And a second question, what was the delta between what they thought you owed them and what you thought they owed you?
On the honesty part, I mean, I would like to think that it was an honest misinterpretation. When I kind of laid it out very simplistically, it was like, well, you'd be getting paid 104% of this job, so under your math, so that how can you get paid 104% of a job? That doesn't make any sense. And so I don't know. I'd like to think it was just an honest. The verbiage in the agreement. This is my first time getting through an asset purchase agreement, and I did have an attorney, and he's a great attorney, but like, I don't know. Somehow my recommendation to anybody would just be try and put exact dollars in the agreement rather than language as to how to handle WIP or jobs in progress. So I don't know. I think it was probably an honest mistake, but it was definitely something that was a point of contention, and it was something that some of the employees were exposed to that they really shouldn't have been, because that just kind of laid some seeds of doubt as far as like, well, this guy is coming in now here, and now he owes money to them, and he doesn't want to pay it, and does this guy even know what the hell he's doing, type of thing.
Yeah.
So we ended up settling that up, and it was fine. I did not owe any money in the end. So then the delta, to answer your question about the delta was quite wide, quite wide. So like, I don't want to say the exact numbers, but it was like somewhere between you owe me a pretty good amount of money and you owe me like twice that pretty good amount of money, type of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So just something that really, it shouldn't have even been an issue, but I feel like since we were we had been really trying to close at the end of June 30th, at the end of the first half, to make it a clean closing. So we had been working really hard and pushing to close on June 30th, just so it was really clean for the books and everything. And we missed that. We ended up closing on July 12th. But I think because we were rushing a little bit to try and get everything done, there was some things that probably could have been a little bit more well-defined in there.
Okay. Yeah. So that was another challenge, Chris. So I guess the question would be, what has happened, or what did you do to improve the situation such that some of these happily, many of these challenges are pretty solidly in the rearview mirror at this point. And from what I gather, you're feeling pretty good about the business these days.
I am. It got kind of worse before it got better.
Do tell.
The general manager left in early October of 2022, and right when he left, our sales just fell off a cliff that month. So that I was like, oh,
terrifying.
No. It was terrifying. Because we're mostly a project-based company, so it's kind of like, you hear, oh, you should find a company with recurring revenue. And I was like, well, there's all these project-based companies out there in construction, foundation repair, structural repair. That's not going anywhere. People are always going to need this type of work. So what I didn't realize is that there's a little bit more seasonality to it than I had originally anticipated going in. Partially that had to do with how revenue is recognized before, coming out of COVID and the housing boom that came with it. They had a pretty significant backlog of work when we were doing due diligence, and revenue is recognized when the job was started, not when the job was sold. So what that meant was you had your big backlog, and it just existed as a liability, and it wasn't recognized as revenue until they started the job. So when you have a big backlog, you can keep starting jobs in the winter, even if you're not really selling as much. So that kind of, because of that, I kind of missed some of the seasonality to it. And, that had been the case since 2020. So I was looking over the last couple of years of financials, and that had been kind of the case. So in October, sales really kind of took a big drop. And, the employee challenges that I was having too, of course, I was being paranoid, and I was thinking, someone's, stealing business. There's got to be something nefarious going on here. The wife of the prior general manager who left was doing our permits for us. So she actually had access to our system a little bit after the fact after he left. So I put a stop to that, but I was really thinking that something is going on here. And there was people in the office too, especially one person that was really loyal to the general manager, and he had actually helped her negotiate a big pay raise right before he left. So she got her big pay raise, but she was still just very unhappy working here after he left, and nothing was going to save that. So ultimately we parted ways, but I was really concerned that there was business just leaking out to him or to someone else. And so, yeah, the winter from like October, November, December, it's part of it's just seasonality, and the holidays, people don't want you coming to their house and banging around under the structure while they have their friends and family in town, or they're out on vacation or whatever it may be. And there's just less, there's less issues and moisture issues that come up that is kind of what generates a lot of phone calls. So that time of the year got slower, and so they got to the point where we were selling jobs and we were starting them pretty soon right after. And if guys didn't have anything to do that day, I would pay them their hourly rate to work in the warehouse and help clean up the warehouse and get everything organized, because I really was very fearful of letting anyone go that was a great person. And so I was trying to keep everyone busy and gainfully employed. And so we did that for like month and a half or so, 2 months. And it burned a lot of cash doing that. And that was probably the most stressful time, I would say, because like I can deal with people leaving, and I can deal with any challenges like that. If someone doesn't want to be here and doesn't like me, that's fine. They don't have to be here. But the guys that did want to be here and bought into the vision, I had this responsibility to keep them employed and keep them busy and taking care, allowed to support their families, and not, otherwise they'll leave. So that was what was more stressful, I'd say, than anything else. So,
well, you're also sitting there wondering if there's some a problem with the absolute foundation, of the business, that all of a sudden, all of a sudden there's no sales. I mean, the money spigot has to be on for anything else downstream of that to work.
Yeah, exactly. I think that there had been some changes to marketing too, right before I took over. Some of the TV commercials were turned off. They had a really strong sales guy who he had kind of come back and asked for more money, and he was allowed to leave, and he was replaced by somebody that was his background was in driving concrete trucks, like never sold anything and didn't even particularly like dealing with people. So I was down to basically one sales guy at the time, and the marketing had been kind of reduced for a while. So it was a lot of digging out of that hole and I think that we really felt the effects of it that November and December.
So then what happened in January? Did sales just sort of miraculously start coming back? And it was basically the seasonality worked itself through?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say part of it was the seasonality. Part of it was that we made some changes. I brought on a new marketing company that was really helping us with some of our organic rankings. To some of the stuff that I thought that we should be on the first result on Google, since we've been around so long. Like, we were on the third page of Google, and that's the type of stuff that, when you're doing due diligence, you're like, oh, low hanging fruit. I can fix that, and that'll be easy, and that'll drive a lot more traffic. But those things do take a little bit of time, right? You can't just fix SEO overnight, and it takes a couple months. So I brought in a new company, and their results were starting to pay off. There was a guy here who was the sales manager, and I changed his position to be the director of operations. So he took over more of the production side, and he became the one that was keeping the trains running on time. And he had a good background in construction. So that was definitely helpful. The one sales guy that was not, was admittedly, like, he'll even say that he doesn't like doing sales. So I was like, well, then maybe that's not the right position for you. So we took him out of that and brought in somebody who had some experience doing the work, but also really wanted to do the sales. Started training him at that time. So all of those things kind of working, and then there was some seasonality to it too. But all of those things kind of working together. When we got to January, it just everything kind of started working, and we started getting good amount of business coming back, and it was a great feeling.
Well, here we are in August, Chris. So do you have a plan for this coming December, November, December, when, are you having to kind of like, account for the fact that, are you expecting that the business will drop off again, like seasonally as it did last year, and plan for that?
I'm planning for something. I guess I'm cautiously optimistic about it. I'm hoping that it's not going to be like last year. I really don't think it will be, because of all the things that we've done to make improvements. I mean, we recently released a new website that's that's much more current and user friendly and able to get lead forms. Recently hired a business development manager who's going to be going out and working with these who would be our referral partners, like structural engineers, home inspectors, realtors, those types of folks that could refer us business. I'm really spending a fair amount of my time working with the marketing company, trying to make sure that everything that they're doing makes sense, make sure we're hitting doing the right ad strategies. So I guess I'm also trying to conserve cash and build up a buffer for the winter just in case. I'm not taking any money out of the business or anything like that right now. Everything is reinvested, and we're either using it for growth or saving it for a rainy day at this point. So I do expect that things might get a little bit quieter, but I think that part of it is just, if you build the backlog of jobs going into the winter, then you have plenty of work to get you through the winter. So and I think that was kind of one of the things that was my issue. When I came in July, the business had been really up for sale and already gone through one due diligence period, and they were very close to closing with this prior buyer. And I think that they thought it was a done deal. So when that fell apart and we had to restart over with me and spend another 3-4 months, it was they weren't going to. I mean, understandably, like, you're trying to get as much out of the business as you can. Like, you're not going to be investing in marketing and investing in things like you would if you were going to keep it for years to come. So especially if you really just thought you were getting through everything. So I think there was just a little deferred maintenance there. Yeah. And had I closed in earlier in the year, I think it would have been less noticeable. But the fact that there was another buyer and it fell apart, and then we had to restart over, I think that was definitely a negative.
Well, Chris, anything else on basically being in this low?
No, I mean, now things are going well. I mean, the first half of 2023 was actually, our sales were better than either of the previous 2 years. So we just had
congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, we just had a mid-year team event where we went to Top Golf and went and played some laser tag games and things like that. And like, I gave my speech, and I was just telling everybody that it's been tough. It's been a lot of work, but I really have enjoyed getting to truly meet them and know these folks, and that they're doing a hell of a job. And we're definitely moving in the right direction. I mean, there's other competitors out there, but I feel like we're a great size. We go up against franchises. There's kind of one big private equity backed company in the immediate area, but I think that we really should be winning against all these people, and there's no reason that we can't just that we shouldn't be significantly bigger than we are right now. So, well,
that's a remarkable trajectory, Chris, and such a hopeful one. And, it kind of has all of the elements of a rocky transition, fetal position, or nausea moments where that's really scary what you described, especially the sales just kind of falling through the floor, and then coming back and feeling like you're now you're excited about not only like is the worst kind of over, but you're also actually excited about the future. I love that. I think so. And one last thing on this, and then I'm watching the time, Chris, and we're basically already at time. Do you have a few more minutes?
Yep. Sure.
Great.
Yeah.
Because I have one more question on just kind of your role and the business itself, and then I just want to make sure we educate me and the audience some on the foundation repair business, because it is one that you hear about in the world of search. You had mentioned, I believe, to me in our pre-call that maybe another acquisition is something that you'd entertain. Are you feeling that confident? Did I get that right?
Yeah, you did. I would definitely entertain it. At this point, there's only so much work. There's only so much production that you can get done with a given amount of people, right? Like a crew can only do so much work. So you can keep adding on crews. It's very hard to find good crawl space people, by the way. Like it's extremely hard to find, because it's not just construction. It's really kind of niche specialty construction where you have to be under a house for 8 hours a day, and finding guys that are good and want to do that work and have clean backgrounds and are someone you'd want to send to a customer's house. It's really difficult. I mean, so recruiting is a challenge. Certainly. So, and then, geography is also a bit of a challenge for us too. We cover all of North and South Carolina. So, I got my general contractor's license in both states. So we do all of both states. So there's a fair amount of driving and gas and hotel rooms and things like that, especially if you're going to the coast or if you're going out west into the mountains. So I would like to try and, acquire, hopefully in the not too distant future, another company in the space, just to give us a little bit more of a geographic reach without having to travel quite so much. I mean, something around Charleston, Wilmington area would be fantastic, or Raleigh's our second biggest market after Charlotte. When I bought the company, the sellers did have a small office in Raleigh, but I went and looked at it, and it was very, very rough, and it had not been used in years. They had tried to open a branch there, and it didn't go well because of, I guess, some personnel issues out there, and so they just basically closed it up. And I remember I went out there with my family for the day, and we went into the office, and I got a key, and I went in, and we just looked around, and my daughter, who was 6 at the time, looked at me. She's like, "Daddy, don't buy this company. This is not nice." Because I mean, there was holes in the ceiling where water had come through, and just an old couch, and it was just, there was like duct tape holding together the roll up door. It was just, not
literally held together with duct tape.
Literally, yeah. So I informed the seller that I was not interested in assuming the lease on that office when we, more so just because I didn't want to be responsible for whatever was to come of that. But there's definitely something to having an office in another location. So I'd like to do that. That's one thing, and that's probably the most logical step. The other thing would be, I could try and find complementary businesses that are here locally. So I've been kicking those ideas around a lot lately, now that I've kind of reached the year mark, and trying to figure out what's the next step. But I do definitely want to do something.
And do you feel that if you looked under the hood at another foundation repair business, that given your 12, 18 months in this business and buying this business and diligencing this business, could really like look at an acquisition candidate, acquisition target, and quickly kind of know if it's a good business and where the holes are? I mean, it's a world of difference from your first time around.
Definitely much better. Yeah. World of difference. Like I honestly had no clue what questions to even ask the first time. I mean, you ask kind of these general questions, whatever comes to mind, and you do diligence, and you have a question about something, and you ask it, and you get an answer. But like now, I would it would be a completely different experience. That's part of the reason why I feel like it's something I want to do again, is because I feel like now I would be able to figure out pretty quickly if it was, what was going on with the business, at least to a much higher level of certainty than I had the first go around.
Great, Chris. Well, before I let you go, can we have a bit of a class on the foundation repair business? So you just said a couple of minutes ago that it's kind of niche construction. So it's a construction business, but very specific type of construction and set of skills. It is a project business. So no recurring revenue. Big job numbers, though. I think you said $10,000 to $15,000 is the average job. Consumer. I mean, these are houses. These are not buildings generally. Correct me if I'm wrong. So
we do a little bit of commercial.
Business.
Yeah, there's a little bit of commercial, but I mean, it's probably 90% residential.
Okay, residential. What else would you tell people about this industry?
It is so. When I got into it, or when I first started, like I thought that it was interesting because it's not going away anytime soon. It's low tech. I mean, you don't really need, you need machinery, you need, excavator, you need a bunch of tools, you need materials, but it's not something that Amazon can come in and beat you to. It's always going to be local. There's always going to be a need for it. Here in the Carolinas, the soil is very clay heavy, and then when you get to the coast, it's very sand heavy. So things move a lot. They expand and contract during the seasons with the rain and the heat and the cold. So the foundations crack, wood gets rotten under the house, water comes in, and you need drains and pumps and dehumidifiers and all of that. So it's definitely not going anywhere. And there's a company here that's kind of our biggest competitor in the area, and they had been bought by a private equity company that was doing a private equity backed roll up, and then they got another investment just recently from KKR. And so I was thinking during due diligence, I was like, well, geez, if these guys can do that, like I don't have to do it on the same scale. I could be perfectly happy being much smaller and just doing something kind of in the same vein. So that was inspirational.
So you saw that private equity interest in the space as validating of the space.
I did, yeah. And I've actually it's more than I thought it was going to be too. I mean, when I came in, I thought that being so project based, we have a little bit of recurring revenue from maintenance agreements and things like that, but it's really not anything too substantial. I had thought that that's maybe there's some interest, but I was really shocked. I mean, in the first couple of months, I got like 10 or 12 phone calls from private equity companies that were interested in talking to me or taking me out to lunch or doing all of this. And I was like, well, thank you. I just bought the business a couple months ago, so I'm really not looking to partner with anybody at this point, but I'll keep you in mind for the future.
You say to him, hey, you should have called me when I was about to puke at the picnic table. You caught me at the wrong moment.
Right, exactly. So, but but it's reassuring, and it's flattering that that they would express interest in, and so that's a good sign. I feel like that means in the right kind of industry. But I mean, it's construction. It's hard, dirty work, but it's not going anywhere.
And Chris, what about, elaborate a little bit, you've already said labor, hard to find people who know how to do this. So how long does it take to train somebody up in this work?
So most of the people that we hire are rookies and don't have too much experience. The guys that we have that are the crew leaders most of them have been with the company for a couple of years. So really fortunate that the crew leaders have all stuck around. With the exception of one or two that were doing, that weren't really up to par, and that was a mutual decision. But the guys that are here right now and that we've elevated to crew leader have all been here for at least, a year and a half plus years. One guy's been here 10 or 12 years. So that was great because these are the guys that really have the knowledge. The hard part is finding I mean, the hard part is, I guess, it would be hard to find another crew leader, because if you want to expand, like I said, you can only do so much revenue with a fixed amount of people here. There's just the human body can only do so much work in a week. So that's kind of, tough to find someone to bring in as a crew leader, and even to find the support people, the rookies that are helping them out. It's shocking. Like, I used to do recruiting for business analysts and things like that in my old job, and you go through this lengthy interview process, and it was very professional. And here, you set up an interview, and over 50% of the time, people don't even show up for the interview, and they tell you they're going to come. Mm-hmm. And then when they do come, a good chunk of those people you don't like, and then of the people you like, a good chunk of those end up having, undesirable backgrounds, and so you can't hire them. So you're left. I think I've sent out 80 or 90 outreach efforts on Indeed, and we got one new hire from it.
Wow. But to be clear, they don't actually have to be that skilled initially.
No,
you're going to skill them up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we definitely we train them. Really, the hardest thing is finding someone that's motivated and is going to work hard, and we give them an opportunity to rotate around with the different crew leaders. And what I tell them is I can give you an opportunity to come in, and I can give you an opportunity to go out with the crew leaders, but it's up to you to impress them and have one of them pick you up at the end of the day. Because if nobody picks you up after you've rotated around with them, then you're going to be sweeping the warehouse until Friday, and then you're going home. So that's the way it works. So, I mean, it's also kind of a youngish person's job, because it's very physically taxing on your body. So people that are even, guys that are in their late 30s, anything beyond that, their body hurts. So one of the things that was really interesting about this coming into this company is, like, I don't consider myself that old. I'm 38, so I guess I'm mid-career-ish, but I'm one of the older people in this company. There's some people that are in various positions, but like the director of operations is younger than me. The business development's younger than me. Pretty much all the production guys are younger than me. A lot of the office customer service folks are younger than me. So, like, I've gone from this position where, in my old corporate life, like, there was all these guys that had been with the company and were in their 50s and had, climbed the corporate ladder, and they were managing directors. And now here I find myself to be one of the older people in the company, which I find interesting.
Yeah, that is an interesting dynamic. Although probably a helpful one in those first couple months when you were trying to earn as much respect as quickly as you could. At least you were older than most of them.
Yeah, not by much, but yeah.
So these are big. Oh, how are margins in the foundation repair business? You're kind of your standard, a little bit over 20 if you're doing well, a little bit under 20 if you're not super efficient.
Yeah, I'd say around
so
that.
20.
I mean, it's a little bit lower. I mean, one of the things with, I think you've had other guests talk about this too, but, with interest rates going up a lot, like, my interest rate in my SBA loan has gone up so much since I acquired the business. I had been working with another lender, like a big mega bank, to try and do an SBA loan, and it was just way too much paperwork, and it was never going to get done on time, but they had a fixed rate. And now I'm like, oh man, maybe I should have stuck with them and got the fixed rate, because it was one of the only SBA lenders that offered a fixed rate. And my lender was great. I went with Live Oak, just for the record, and they were fantastic. The guy that I worked with there was really, really good, and was able to get everything to work out. But having a floating interest rate right now kind of sucks. So there's an extra several $1,000s every month that, of course I modeled it that it would go up, but like, I didn't. It still kind of hurts when you're like, oh, I'm spending an extra $7,000 a month on interest that I wasn't a couple months ago. But margins. I mean, margins are like you said, they're in the teens to 20-ish, I'd say.
And one more question, just on the business, the getting leads, getting sales. So if you guys are finding yourself going all the way out to the coasts, I mean, and all the way down to South Carolina, I mean, it sounds like, and wherever places that sometimes your guys have to spend the night, you basically spend the night in a hotel room to serve as a customer. That tells me that there's just a lot more demand than there is supply. If you have to, if people are willing to call you from hours away to come service their home. So is that to say that there's, what does it look like to get leads? Are you, and to make the phone ring, is it all an online game? Is it basically all, like you referred to SEO earlier? Just give us a picture of marketing.
Yeah. So right now, I mean, most everything that we're doing is online. It's pay-per-click and SEO, and I hired somebody to do our social media. So we have a little bit of a more professional Instagram and Facebook than ever was in the past. But really, that's what we're doing now. The company previously had done TV commercials. I got pretty close to doing TV commercials, and I backed out at the last minute just because I don't know. Like I don't consume very much TV at all. Like if I watch a half an hour of Hulu with my wife before going to sleep, like that's about the maximum amount of TV we get in a day. So I was like, I don't know if I want to spend this kind of money. They can be $8,000-10,000+ a month to run TV ads. So I think we will get to that, and maybe we'll get to doing billboards and doing other things to just drive brand awareness. But it's been mostly online and mostly just focusing on, trying to do good customer service, really. I mean, trying to get good reviews on Google, sharing those on social media, sharing those on our website, getting referral sources. We get more business from, realtors and home inspectors and things like that than really anything else. Probably that's about evenly tied with Google. So
and it sounds like you doubled down on that. You hired this BD person to cultivate those relationships, the referral network. Well, it seems like the kind of business, this may be naive or wrong, that brand awareness might be less important, i.e. marketing on television or billboards, because how often does somebody really need, structural work or foundation repair done? Not very. And so it's kind of like something that somebody would Google and just kind of like look at the top 2 or 3, and whoever got the best Google reviews, they put on a couple calls, best price, who calls them back, sort of thing, as opposed to seeing a billboard, and remembering a name. Actually, but on that point, I guess we should define it a little better.
What we do is, the way we describe is everything from the subfloor down. So these are typically these are problems that have usually been going on for a long time that people have probably known about, and they've just been putting it off. Or, part of the reason that realtors are a good referral source is because during the real estate transaction, there's a home inspection, and then the home inspector will call out certain things. And, then they say, oh, you should consult a licensed contractor that specializes in, this type of foundation repair. And so we get a lot of calls around that.
Gotcha.
But it's replacing wood under the house that's rotting or has termite damage. It's adding, building piers to support the home, drains, to divert water away to keep the foundation dry. We do encapsulations with, dehumidifiers where they're sealing off the crawl space. So it's all of that. I mean, it's stuff that you can put it off for a while, but it's one of those things that you really shouldn't put off for too much longer than recommended, because it's only going to get worse. Like if you have rotting wood under your house, like eventually your floors will start sagging. A lot of the things that we get calls from customers saying, oh, why does my door stick, or why can't this window doesn't open, or I see little hairline cracks around the frame of the window in the house, or there's a soft spot in my floor. Those types of things are kind of the leading indicators usually that get somebody to call us, and then we send a consultant out there and do a free inspection and then let them know what they're looking at. So, but yeah, that was my, your notion of like someone just Googles it and looks at the first 2 or 3. Like that's exactly what I thought too when I was coming into buying the business. I was like, brand recognition is probably not that important. It's just a matter of ranking well on Google when they Google you, and then providing good customer service, and you can probably get a decent market share if you just execute really well on those 2 things.
Well, Chris, anything I failed to ask you or that we didn't touch on? I feel like we've covered a lot, but what did I miss?
No, I think that's the the whole story for the most part. It's been definitely an interesting ride here for the last year, and my wife has asked me many times during the last year, like, oh, so do you regret it? And I've always said no, I don't regret it, and that's mostly been true. I don't regret it. It's been hard at certain points, but I really feel like there's certain days when everything's clicking and everything's going well, and you just it like nothing could be better because it's your business at the end of the day. It's not you're not in someone else's business where you're spending your time and your energy and your effort to get them success. Like it's such a great feeling, because like when the days when things work, it really feels really good. And then you get obviously the flip side of that, but that's just that's how it goes. But I think over the last 6 months, I've really been having a lot more good days than bad days, and I feel like I made the right decision. So
I'm so pleased, Chris, and that sense of ownership is what entrepreneurship is in large part about. And do you feel like this business is yours now after you went through?
I do, yeah. I mean, there's still certain things around. I mean, the office still looks pretty much the same as when I came in, and there's certain things that I do want to, when I get to try and personalize it and make it a little bit different. But yeah, I really do feel that way now. I feel like I'm in a place now where I've got a good relationship with everybody that's here. I feel like the people that are here want to be here. We've got the right people in the right seats. And, that's what I tell people is like, that's how I view my job, is making sure that we have the right people in the right seats and that there's enough leads coming in the door to keep our salespeople busy, which will in turn keep our production crews busy. So like I think I look at it as those are my two primary functions. So
that's a great distillation. If people want to get in touch with you, Chris, what's the best way?
They can. I'm on LinkedIn. They can reach out to me on LinkedIn, or they're welcome to send me an email. And my email's Christopher Jones, 7 @gmail. So happy to chat.
Chris, thanks so much for coming on and sharing this roller coaster of a story. Congratulations for getting through those rough patches and feeling being where you are now, and things are looking pretty rosy. Knock on wood.
Yeah.
It's the roller coaster never completely ceases in small business, but let's enjoy the feeling of potential while we have it.
Yeah, I am definitely enjoying it. And yeah, thank you very much for having me on, Will. Like I said, I've been listening to you. I have a 30-minute drive in the morning and in the afternoon, and I listen to you every time a new episode comes out. So it's an honor to be on the show, and you've had some illustrious guests. So hope this episode's okay.
Among them now, one Chris Jones. So good deal. Thank you for saying that, Chris. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Will.
I hope you enjoyed that interview. Make sure you subscribe to the Acquiring Minds channel below. We are now publishing twice a week, so tons of new interviews and stories to come. Stories that will help you along your own path to acquiring a business.